when I was in middle school, we played a football game one night, and American football, there's a need sometimes to punt the ball. We were backed up way back into the end zone. I mean, our punter was kicking from like the goal line. And we were 7th or 8th grade, I can't remember which. And when the punter went to kick the ball, one of the guys on our team was getting shoved backward into the punter by the defensive line that was coming to block the kick. When the kick was made, the impact, the ball went literally straight up in the air. It had no downfield yardage at all. It went straight up in the air. And many of us just stood there looking up at the ball, wondering what was going to happen next. Well, it came down, and one of our guys caught it and then fumbled it, and then another guy caught it and then fumbled it. And we're on the end zone, terrified that if the other team just falls on the ball, they've got incredible field position. It should be like halfway down the field, but they're right on the goal line, and then we're afraid they're going to actually run it into the end zone. But instead, one of our guys picks up the fumble way out on the edges as the ball's bouncing all over the place, and he just happens to be the fastest guy on the field. He runs it all the way for an end zone. So what we thought was going to be a punt and give the ball back, or what we thought was going to be a punt and then end up in the end zone of the opponent, ends up a touchdown. So it was like the best fumble play ever. Now, I've seen football plays many times where things are going the wrong direction. I watched a guy this weekend who took the ball on about the 20 and tried to go upfield. And about the 23, 24, he ran into a wall of defenders and he backed up a little bit. Now he's at the 15. And then he starts running in a long sweep. He's down to the 4 or the 5. And then he makes his way back around and he gets to the line of scrimmage, and it looks like he's going to break away, and he gets tackled at about the 27. Now, he ran about 100 yards for a 4 or 5 yard gain. I've also seen, though, when that ball gets loose and it gets fumbled around, and then somebody who's not a regular ball carrier, who doesn't have the orientation of goal lines, gets spinned around in the game, and they grab the ball and they run with all their gusto to the end zone, and they cross the line and they throw their hands up, and all their teammates have their heads down and they're thinking, what, I just scored a touchdown. And then they realize they're standing in the end zone of the opponent. In Acts chapter 9, we find a very similar thing happening. Here's what I mean by that. At this time, Saul of Tarsus, was breathing down the necks of the master's disciples. He was out for the kill. He went to the chief priest. He got arrest warrants to take them to the places, to take to the meeting places in Damascus, so that if he found anyone there belonging to the way, whether men or women, he could arrest them and bring them to Jerusalem. And he set off. When he got to the outskirts of Damascus, he was suddenly dazed, that was a big word, by a blinding flash of light. As he fell to the ground, he heard a voice say, Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me? And he said, who are you, Master? I am Jesus, the one you're hunting down. I want you to get up and enter the city. In the city, you'll be told what to do next. His companions stood there dumbstruck. They could hear the sound, but they couldn't see anyone. While Saul, picking himself up off the ground, found himself stone blind. They had to take him by the hand and lead him into Damascus. He continued blind for 3 days. He ate nothing. He drank nothing. There was a disciple in Damascus by the name of Ananias. The master spoke to him in a vision and said, Ananias, yes, master, get up and go over to Straight Avenue and ask at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus. His name is Saul. He's there praying. He has just had a dream in which he saw a man named Ananias enter the house and lay hands on him so he could see again. Ananias protested, Master, you can't be serious. Everybody's talking about this man and the terrible things he's doing. His reign of terror against your people in Jerusalem. And now he's shown up here with papers from the chief priests that give him license to do the same thing to us. But the master said, don't argue. Go. I've picked him as my personal representative to the Gentiles and the Jews and the kings. And now I'm about to show him what he's in for. The hard suffering that goes with this job. There are a lot of people who are passionate about ideas. And without picking on any particular idea as right or wrong, I think of things like organizations like PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, People are very, very passionate about how animals are treated. Some are more concerned about general wildlife. Some more about domesticated animals. How do you treat your pets? Is a puppy a lifelong commitment versus someone who has a puppy until their kids grow up and then they let the puppy go or they pass it on to somebody else? There are those who are out to save the whales. They would give their lives. There was a movie called Free Willy that was a very family-friendly oriented movie toward saving the whales, but it was to inspire young people to invest their lives in saving the whales. There are a lot of campaigns out there like that. There's campaigns for global warming. There are campaigns for pro-life and pro-choice, pro-abortion. There are a lot of different things out there that people get invested in, and they're very, very passionate about them. Saul was like that. Saul was very, very passionate about what he did. Saul would not just persecute by giving a hard time. He wouldn't just say to people, listen, this whole Jesus thing, y'all need to stop doing that. You need to get back to the roots of what we had before. He went way further than that. Paul's actions, Paul's declarations, Paul's confirmation of his passion toward changing people's mind was very, very obvious. He went all the way to the equivalent of the halls of Congress. He had law written. He had documents. He had papers in his hand that said, I have the authority to arrest you, to bind you up, to take you into custody because you believe in Jesus. And I'm going to drag you into Jerusalem, and I'm going to try you in the court in front of all of these religious leaders. Now that's what happened to Jesus. Remember, that's how he ended up on the cross? Yeah. When Peter was challenged just before Jesus went to the cross, and they said, hey, aren't you one of his? Didn't you used to hang out with that dude? Hey, you look like one of his people. Peter denied him 3 times. No, it's not me. No, you got the wrong guy. And in fact, at one point, he cursed about denying him. And then later changed his mind and said, no, I really am his. The question I want to ask you today as a leadership question is, are you passionate about what you do and yet find that what you're doing is wrong? See, Saul had all of that passion, all of that power moving in one direction. Saul was very passionate about what he was doing, very diligent in his work, very committed to his work. And then he met someone on a road outside of Damascus who basically said to him, listen, you got this all wrong. And Saul spent the next 3 or 4 days blind because of that encounter. Because when he met Jesus, Jesus said, look, that's enough of this. We've had enough of this. It's time to stop now. And all of the positioning, all of the looking for power, all of the gathering of the papers and the meeting with the right people and the strategizing that Saul had been doing, Jesus said, you've been doing all the passionate things. You've got all the right connections. You're connected with all the right people. That's incredible. But you're against me. So like that running back who has run with all of his heart, and he is running as hard as he can, it seems odd sometimes that somewhere along the way, the resistance dies down. You feel like I've got so much momentum, there's nobody trying to stop me anymore. And I'm sure those rumbling, fumbling, picking up the fumble and running into the wrong end zone guys felt the same thing. For a long time, there was pressure. They were constantly fighting against the other team. And then when the other team realized, hey, he's running to our goal, not his own, they just step aside. The reality is when you're leading, and you're leading with passion, and you're leading with conviction, and you're leading with force, and you're leading with influence, but you're leading in the wrong direction, there will be a point where all the resistance just stops. There are those people who just unplug and they give up on you. They feel like I can't make a change in them anymore. They're pushing with a passion to one way. Now, when we are blind leaders, when we're so driven by our passion that we haven't let our common sense take hold, when we're so driven by our passion that we haven't checked in with anybody else to ask, am I still headed the right way? Am I still on target with what I'm doing? I've seen people pour their passion into a career, pour their passion into an education course, pour their passion into something that is so incredibly powerful, and then get there and realize that wasn't what I thought I was fighting for. I know a young lady who spent a little over 6 years getting her bachelor's degree. She kept changing her master over and over again. Finally, when she got her degree program completed, in the field of her degree program, she got an incredible job opportunity, and she knocked it out of the park with this job opportunity. I mean, over the top. If I told you what she accomplished, you would know the name of that accomplishment. And in the process, decided, I don't even like this work. So 6 years of education, all of the time invested, a phenomenal project, and even great results. And then realized I've wasted, not invested, I've wasted all that time. Now, I'm sure the education has still come in handy in other things. I know that in what she does now, her undergrad or her minors are still very helpful in what she was doing. But all of the time that was passionately invested in that goal, when the goal was accomplished, whatever. It's like crossing the touchdown, the end zone, and scoring a touchdown for the wrong team. She found herself in that place where she said, I've done all the hard work, and I went past the resistance. I even got to the place where I felt like I had momentum, and then realized the reason I had no resistance and had so much momentum is because I was going the wrong way. Get up and go over to Straight Avenue. Ask at the house of Judas for a man from Tarsus. His name is Saul. The master said, don't argue, just go. I've picked him as a personal representative to the Gentiles and kings and Jews, and now I'm about to show him what he's in for. The hard suffering that goes with the job. I see, up to this point, Saul had gained momentum. He had gained direction. He had gained authority. He had gained leadership skills. He had gained the trust of the highest leaders in the land to give him papers to go out and bring in these way followers, these Jesus lovers, to bring them in and persecute them and change their direction. So Ananias went and found the house, and he placed his hands on blind Saul and said, Brother Saul, the master sent me, the same Jesus you saw on your way here. He sent me so you could see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit. No sooner were the words out of his mouth than something like scales fell off of Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got to his feet, was baptized, and sat down with them to a hearty meal. Saul spent a few days getting acquainted with Damascus disciples, but then went right to work, wasting no time preaching in the meeting places that this Jesus was the Son of God. They were caught off guard by this, and not all were sure they could trust him. They kept saying, isn't this the man who wreaked havoc in Jerusalem among the believers? And didn't he come here to do the same thing? Arrest us and drag us off to jail in Jerusalem for sentencing by the high priest? But the suspicions didn't slow Saul down for even a minute. His momentum was up now, and he plowed straight through into the opposition, disarming the Damascus Jews and trying to show them that Jesus was the Messiah. After this had gone on for quite a long time, some Jews conspired to kill him, but Saul got wind of it. They were watching the city gates around the clock so they could kill him. Then one night the disciples engineered his escape by lowering him over the wall in a basket. Back in Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him. They didn't trust him one bit. Then Barnabas took him under his wing. He introduced him to the apostles and stood up for him. He told them how Saul had been spoken to in the Master on the Damascus road, and how in Damascus itself he had laid his life on the line with bold preaching in Jesus' name. After that, he was accepted as one of them, going in and out of Jerusalem with no questions asked, uninhibited as he preached in the Master's name. But he ran afoul of a group called the Hellenists. He had been engaged in a running argument with them, who plotted his murder. When his friends learned of the plot, they came and got him out of town. They took him to Caesarea, where they shipped him off to Tarsus. Now, isn't it funny that Paul, as Saul, as leaving Damascus, headed out of town, he's got the papers, he's on his way, he's going to go gather up all these Christians, all these Jesus followers, and take them into the high priest and have him prosecuted. Some of them even, like Stephen, stoned to death because of their faith in Jesus Christ. Now, as time goes on and Jesus changes Saul's name to Paul, and he begins to do the work of the kingdom, his life doesn't get easier. It gets harder. All the momentum he had gained, and he had the sway and the influence of all these leaders, suddenly it falls away. Now, all of a sudden, he is not a deep influence with a lot of people positively surrounding him. Instead, he's being pounded on every side. The people he used to work for are trying to hunt him down and kill him. The people he used to persecute are terrified of him. He's saying, no, I want you now. I'm on the way too. I believe in Jesus as Messiah too. And they're like, no, I'm not so sure about that. You might be playing a game. You might be lying to me. And so the level of his effort had to be exacerbated. It went way up. Jesus told him, this life is going to be tough. You've been running the wrong direction so long with so much passion that running the right direction is not going to get any easier. You're like a salmon swimming upstream, and I am the stream. That's a challenge that we all face as leaders, especially when we've been going the wrong direction and we've amassed a following. Think back to the old cartoons with Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and they would be running across the highway, and all of a sudden you would see this hole open up. The Roadrunner would, or the Coyote would throw a black circle on the ground. It would open up a hole, and he's expecting the Roadrunner to fall in it, but his momentum carries him right over the hole. And then when the Coyote comes running by, Roadrunner passes the hole, Coyote falls in the hole. But right behind him, you see this whole ruffle of paper and debris that's following him. It's because he's created so much momentum that everything is kind of following him. The boat does that in the water. It creates a wake, and everything kind of follows in that same direction. Well, Saul had the same problem. He had created so much momentum going this way. Now imagine taking that boat and turning around and going right back against the same waves. It gets a really rough ride really quick. If you could just turn it right around, all the flow of the water going that way, you're going against it. That's exactly what happened with Saul when he became Paul. All of the people he had been leading in one direction to persecute the Christians. And the guys on the side of the road with him heard the noise and they're like, you guys all right? Y'all hear that, right? But Jesus appeared as a flashing, blinding light. And only Saul was blinded by it. All of the friends he thought he had moving in his direction are now going the wrong direction. And now he's coming upstream of all the people that he had been persecuting. And again, he's going the wrong direction. Now he's going the direction he's supposed to be. But that 180 causes him to fight against a whole lot more resistance. I want to ask you this as leaders. Do you find yourself in a place where you no longer have any resistance at all? Have you found that your leadership has moved with so much influence and so much power that there's no one resisting you at all? I want to ask you to challenge yourself and ask, have I reached a place where I'm going the wrong direction and no one is fighting me anymore? I'm too close to the cliff for them to fight back. I'm too close to the other guy's goal line. I'm going to score for the opposing team. And that's why no one's fighting me anymore? If that's the case, it's time for an about face. It's time for you to turn around. If you're moving and you have no resistance because you've lost your momentum, and the truth is you're not moving at all, that also requires, as Brian Flanagan says, a checkup from the neck up. But if you find that you are struggling, and it doesn't matter which way you're going, you have struggles from those who used to be your friends, and you have struggles with those that you're trying to make your friends, the chances are you're doing something you're supposed to be. I know that sounds weird, but I want to encourage you. If you find that either direction you turn, you're struggling, I want you to remember this. It doesn't matter if you're passionately right or you're passionately wrong. Passion will bring resistance. But you need to make sure that the direction you're going is the right way, that you're following who you're supposed to be following, that you're leading who you're supposed to be leading. Life will always bring struggles. It's like when you have children and they get quiet, that's when you get concerned. When life begins to have no struggles, when there is no resistance in life at all, that's when you need to be worried. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.